Hello and welcome to my presentation today on what are determinants of wins in college basketball. So to start, why should people care about something like this? Well, to start, college basketball is not only a massive industry, but it's a very interesting sport. There's a ton of turnover in it. The maximum player can play for is 4 years. A lot of players will leave earlier. They'll go play overseas. They'll go to the NBA. They'll transfer. And so there's constant turnover in college basketball. And if you can find the key statistics in wins or the key determinant of wins in college basketball, then you can consistently recruit the players that fit those characteristics, which is why some programs can be better than others. Another thing is that there is no common way to evaluate players objectively. If you ever listen to a scout talk or an analyst on television, a majority of them just kind of say the eye test. They say this player looks really good. They score a lot of points. That's really kind of subjective. Points are also not a great stat to evaluate a player by. Furthermore, this can be applied to the NBA, and this can help younger players as well, because if a younger player knows that, say, like a statistic like free throw shooting is pretty important, then they can know that if they practice that and get very good at it, then they have a higher chance at playing Division I college basketball or something like that. So in a perfect world, all the data would be normally distributed, which a majority of the data is normally distributed, but I'll get to later in the presentation some parts that are not. A singular model would have the lowest AIC, RMSE, and the highest adjusted R squared, which actually does happen in this case when I get to the models. However, I'll tell you why that's not the clear-cut best model yet, and has every possible data point. So we do have all the data from the 2018-19 season. However, years and years of data would probably be better for this than just going off one season. This might have been an anomaly of the season. Maybe teams shot really good from the free throw line for some reason this season. Like maybe there were fans, so they shot worse from the free throw line this year or something like that. So where we got the data from, we got the data from College Basketball Reference. There's the link to my data. The data set I got it from, I downloaded it as an Excel workbook. And then also I went over three things on the top and went to advanced school stats because I wanted to look at some advanced level stats to really get into the nitty gritty of what makes teams win in college basketball. So I took all the stats under school advanced, and then I also took SRS simple rating system, which is a rating system that uses points for and against to determine how good a team is, and then strength of schedule. So here are the model comparisons so far. So I created 4 models. I plan to create more, but these are just the 4 preliminary ones I chose. So as you can see, the full interaction model has the highest adjusted R squared, lowest AIC, and lowest RMSE, which should make it a easy model to choose. However, it also by far has the most predictors, while the backwards stepwise and the forward stepwise, while they may have higher AICs and RMSEs, they have much lower number of predictors, which is what we want. So looking at the R output, here's the output for the full model and the backward stepwise models, and then the AICs I extracted from both of them. And then this is the same for the full interaction model. So I just added interactions that were statistically significant. So like if the interaction for like steal percentage, it wasn't significant, so I just decided not to include it. However, I do plan on using interactions for like the backward stepwise and the forward stepwise, which you can see right here. Maybe do interactions for that as well. So some challenging points I had, starting at the top, collecting the data. If you go all the way back and you look at the picture I took of the data, they have little notations for making the NCAA tournament, so I had to remove those because that's not part of the team name, and that made it kind of difficult. Also, the variability of schedule. If you're comparing 2 schools like Gonzaga and Duke, who are both very good schools, they can choose their out-of-conference schedule, so usually the randomness from that kind of balances out for most schools. However, Duke plays in the ACC, so their level of competition is much higher. However, Gonzaga, they play in the WCC, so a bit of a lower level of competition. So their stats may be inflated because half their schedules against teams that aren't as good as Duke's. Furthermore, I couldn't use conference wins, home wins, or away wins because these stats were cumulative, as I was kind of hoping to do at one point, and I couldn't find statistics purely for conference play, home play, or away play readily available. And then also damaged hardware. So you may notice that like some of the variable names change only very slightly from like TS to like TS percentage for true shooting percentage. And that's just because I accidentally spilled water on my laptop and damaged it. So I had to download R on my desktop and do some of this analysis. So describing the data. So the good news is that our main variable, our predictor variable wins is normally distributed, as you can see here on the left. The two variables that I did have a bit of an issue, or I would like to have pointed out, true shooting percentage is a little bit skewed to the left. As you can see, some teams are kind of weighing down the true shooting percentage by not shooting that well. And then strength of schedule is kind of a combination of bimodal and skewed to the right. And that's because there are some schools like Texas Southern, which is one that comes to mind, that they will schedule all 9 or 10 games against really good teams just because their record in non-conference play won't matter because they're probably not going to make the tournament with an at-large bid. So the only way they'll make their tournament is to win their conference. So they just use those out-of-conference games to play really good teams and prepare for conference play. While other teams, like a team like Duke, will use those out of conference games to actually try and get quality wins. So they'll schedule some easier teams so that they have a pretty decently looking record. Next, we have some assumptions. So here is the plots for linearity and constant variability. And then there's a QQ plot for normality. And then independence can be assumed. So we can assume comfortably that each game is independent of one another. And yeah, they my models meet all the assumptions. I just used the full mod for the assumptions. And so lastly, 2 things on interesting results. So effective field goal percentage, which is a pretty commonly cited statistic in the NBA for evaluating players, was not in either of the stepwise models, which certainly I found kind of interesting, but maybe it's not as important of a statistic as we think it is. And then lastly, I'm a big Seton Hall men's basketball fan. So I put in Seton Hall statistics. I went to the data set. And found Seton Hall stats, and I put them into each model to determine how many wins my models think Seton Hall would have had. They actually had 20 wins. So they were pretty close. They were about a win and a half off. But what I found interesting was the full interaction model, which if you remember had the lowest AIC, lowest RMSE, and highest adjusted R squared, was actually the worst at predicting this. Now, obviously, this is only one team, but I just found that pretty interesting. And I would like to thank you for listening to my presentation today. I think that determining and predicting team success in sports is always really interesting. And I hope to create a model that maybe will get a bit closer to that. Thank you.